presentando la Biennale Tecnologia, and we thank Juan Carlos de Martin, the Vice Rector, for letting us use this beautiful room and all the equipment. And we have as guest Professor Ira Longini, University of Florida. He's a well-known researcher in epidemics and statistician and biostatistician. And the seminar is sponsored by our department, DISMA. We are starting working a little bit on epidemics as well, not formally from a network and epidemics point of view. My name is Mauro Gasparini. I'm a professor in biostatistics, and I do mostly clinical trials and methods for clinical statistics. So we have PhD students and postdocs in clinical statistics. Also clinical meaning also vaccines. So for example, we have relationships with GSK and other companies sponsoring some of our research. And talking about clinical statistics, so therapies, there are also vaccines. Vaccines are a special kind of therapies for epidemic disease, and that's why we're here. The seminar is jointly presented by ISI, which instead has a long history of studying epidemics, and I want to ask Ciro to give a couple of words about it. It's a good opportunity to meet together, our department and ISI. We don't collaborate as much as we should, and there will be a good opportunity to do it. And also, last thing, the Sorgente program is sponsored, is a project, it's a research project sponsored by Regione Piemonte, our department, and DSAT, another department, and a hospital, Amedeo di Savoia. We have some representatives here, and Candiolo, and a computer company, an information technology company called Moltosenso are involved, and we're trying to do some phylogenetics and some research on the virus and its variants. You know, a few months ago, the variant calling problem was more important. Now we feel it less, although COVID is rising again, and we should always be worried about it. But there'll be also other diseases which will keep us busy, so we're not worried about that. Ciro, please, want to say something?
Thank you, Mauro. And I would like to thank, first of all, the Polytechnic University for convening this, and Professor Gasparini in particular. My name is Ciro Cattuto. I'm the scientific director of ISI Foundation. ISI Foundation is a private, non-profit research center based here in Torino, Italy. And our paths with epidemics go a long way back. The first team of epidemic modeling was created by Professor Alessandro Vespignani at ISI back in 2006. And actually, it's a pleasure at the same time. It's troubling to see that the first European project on epidemic prediction and forecasting was funded under the 6th framework program at ISI Foundation, coordinated by Professor Vespignani in 2007. And a lot of the problems and challenges that were, very much visible, that are very much visible today, were very much visible back then. So over the course of this time, we had the privilege of collaborating via Alessandro Vespignani and his team. I see here Corrado Giannini in particular, on several projects where the knowledge and the inspiration of the work of Professor Longini was really key. In particular, two elements, I would say. One is the culture of interdisciplinarity, really in an environment where you can mix very different competencies and talents. And the second is the ambition of powering mathematical modeling with new data streams. And I think this is what Alessandro, and in his collaboration with Professor Longini, ISI has brought forward. So I very much look forward to hearing your talk, and I thank again Professor Gasparini and Polytechnic University for organizing this. Thank you.
Okay, please, Ira. Yes.
It's on. Really a pleasure to be here, and I've been dreaming of being in Torino for many years in the ISI. You'll notice my talk, the logo down below. It's the University of Florida and the Center for Inference and Dynamics of Infectious Diseases, and Dr. Vespignani as a part of that center, and we've had a long collaboration with scientists at the ISI over the years in infectious disease modeling, everything from Ebola Zika, to COVID, and onward. So it's a great pleasure to be here and be able to, in person, to see everything that's going on and to address you. So today I'm going to talk about the WHO Research and Development Blueprint for Action to Prevent Epidemics. Not that we're doing a very good job, but the idea is preventing and controlling global infectious disease pandemics. And I'm going to tell you a story as I do this, as well as how the WHO R&D Blueprint was born and what its role is, which I'm part of. So some quick opening statements just to set the scene for this talk. First, we would not be here without viruses. You know, viruses have played a very important part of our evolution. So we owe viruses quite a bit. On the other hand, they're trying to kill us at the same time. I see half the audience is wearing masks even today, a testament to what the viruses are doing to us. But they're not doing it on purpose. So I can assure you that. They're not even alive. They're just little snips of DNA or RNA, so mostly RNA. We cannot stop them, but we can outwit them, mostly with vaccines. And we need to listen to Marx. We still, after all these years, need to listen to Marx, and I listen to him all the time. And he said, philosophers have hitherto only interpreted the world in various ways. The point is to change it. And so that's the exact point we want to make in this talk, that we don't have to let these viruses dominate us, and bacteria. I should give some credit to bacteria, but there's some but they didn't. They're not responsible for our evolution. So, in recent times, at least since I started working in this field, what has emerged, and I've just made a short list. You know, HIV/AIDS came from monkeys to humans around 1920. Somewhere near Kinshasa in the Democratic Republic of Congo, and we all know what happened with that starting in 1980. Ebola came from bats to humans, first time described in 1976 in Zaire, which is now the DRC. And of course, I will tell you quite a bit about Ebola in this talk. Pandemic influenza, another example. The last installment was influenza H1N1 pandemic in 2009 that emerged near Veracruz, Mexico. And that was a triple reassortment of avian, swine, and human genes all combined. Zika, unknown source, 1947, first described in the Zika forest in Uganda. And we know that story now. And Zika, by the way, is not gone. It's starting to make a comeback. And of course, COVID-19, or SARS-CoV-2, again, unknown source, and from Wuhan, China, sometime late in 2019. And then now, we're on the cusp of yet another pandemic, which is monkeypox. I'll talk a little bit about monkeypox, too, in this talk, since it's been occupying a lot of my time in the last few weeks. In fact, all this morning, for example. Unknown source, it's endemic in West or Central Africa, probably coming from not monkeys, but rodents to humans. First discovered in monkeys in 1958, hence its name. And by the way, the name will be changed very soon, so the WHO is working on that. So all of these, come from some zoonotic source, either bats or rodents or other things, other mammals. They spread to humans. The humans, as we know, spread it through mostly internationally through jet travel, and eventually we have a pandemic. So what I'm going to show you next is a computer simulation that we created showing you the spread of the H1N1 pandemic, flu, in 2009, 2010. It'll give you a good picture. So this is based on a mathematical model. I'm going to show you one stochastic realization of the global spread of the virus. And this model, of course, was used to try to combat that spread. So you can see it first coming out of Veracruz, Mexico, in, I can't see the date, but you can see it. This is in the spring of 2009. Each of those blue arcs is the first time a case goes from an infected place to an uninfected place. And then you see it swinging to the southern hemisphere in their winter. We're now in the middle of July in 2010. And I'm sorry, 2009. And the size of the dots tell you the size of the epidemic. And now what it's going to do is spring back to the northern hemisphere now in the fall, in October of 2009. And eventually, of course, this virus has spread throughout the planet and is still with us. Every influenza season, we have a drifted version of this virus. So as I said, this is a stochastic compartmental patch model, but it very close to is of course calibrated to the actual spread. So what can we do about these? Prediction is futile. What will emerge? When will it emerge? We're talking about unknown unknowns. We haven't predicted a single new virus or yet. And so we completely are caught by surprise every time it happens. But what we can do is stop or slow spread with surveillance and containment initially. And that is initially, when we don't have any vaccines, we don't have any therapeutics, we simply isolate cases and quarantine the contacts of those cases. And then we rapidly as possible develop tests, vaccines, and therapeutics that try to control these things. And so that's what the WHO Blueprint is all about. It's focused on doing just that at the World Health Organization. And it's a large operation, and it has a list of priority diseases, this is the pre-list, the current list, which is updated maybe every year or so. And you can see I put in bold the two of the important threats that we're now dealing with were on this list. COVID-19's on the list, Crimean Congo hemorrhagic fever, Ebola, and several other filoviruses, including Marburg virus, Lassa fever, Middle East respiratory syndrome, such as MERS and SARS, were always on the list. And of course, COVID is one of those. Nipah and virus, Rift Valley, Zika. And this is something that I insisted be put on the list, and it's on there. It's just called Disease X. And so that's what's coming next. So up until recently, COVID-19 was Disease X. Of course, monkeypox is not on this list. So I'm going to talk first about Ebola and the birth of the R&D Blueprint and what was done about it. And as already mentioned, it's a zoonotic virus that emerged from a bat somewhere at some time way back and keeps emerging from bats and infecting mammals, mostly great apes and getting into humans. This is a list of all the Ebola outbreaks that we've seen going all the way back. And the last outbreaks are current, 2020 to 2022. There's been an outbreak off and on, just with a handful of cases in the Democratic Republic of Congo, the DRC. However, in 2018, 2020, there was a large outbreak in a war zone in the DRC. And then if you go back to 2014-16, there was a massive outbreak, as you might know, in West Africa, in Sierra Leone, Liberia, and Guinea. But you can trace these all the way back to the original outbreak. I forgot my reading glasses, so you'll have to forgive me. See, Amy might wife out there always reminds me to carry my reading glasses, and I never do. But anyway, so it goes all the way back to 1976 in the Democratic Republic of Congo, which was the first outbreak. And one of the things you can see is most of the outbreaks are small, and the case fatality rates are very high, in the 70–80% range, except for going back to 2014–16. Of course, that's a huge outlier with many tens of thousands of cases, and then again in 2018–2020. So back when we were dealing with that massive outbreak in 2014–2016 at WHO, we were trying to come up with a way to develop a vaccine for Ebola and control Ebola at the same time. And what we settled on was ring vaccination. And ring vaccination was first used during the consolidation phase of smallpox eradication. And it's a special case of surveillance and containment where you isolate cases and quarantine contacts. And in this case, instead of quarantining the contacts, you vaccinate them. And you vaccinate the contacts of those contacts of the index cases. And that's how smallpox was eradicated with an effective vaccine. And it's the only disease humans have eradicated in all of human history. And it's obviously one of the great accomplishments, maybe the greatest for humanity. And so what is ring vaccination? There's a contact, and then you find, so that's an index case, sorry. That's a person with Ebola, the very first person comes into an Ebola treatment center. Then you find the people that had very close contact with that person, and more people who live with that individual, and more people who visited that individual. And then you start getting the contacts of the contacts, extended family and household members of those individuals, and even more individuals that are contacts. And then you vaccinate all those people as fast as possible. But of course, you have to have a vaccine that works. So in order to find a vaccine that worked during this horrible Ebola outbreak in West Africa in 2014, we founded the Ebola vaccine trial, ring vaccine trial. And the vaccine trial was successful. And this is a Lancet paper describing the interim analysis of that trial, which I'll describe to you briefly. This is getting to some of the sites in Guinea. And it's too bad there's no sound, but that's okay. If there was sound, you could hear the rain and the windshield wipers slapping. But let me see if I can get the sound to work here. No, I can't.
Just a second, Ira. Scusi, può mettere il volume?
Anyway, just to give you an idea how remote some of these rings were. And some of them, of course, you couldn't even get to by in this way. You had to get there on foot or by dugout canoe. Oops. Let's see if we can hear the windshield wipers. No. Okay, don't worry about it. It's fine. I'll just give you some feel for how this trial was done. In each village, in each location, they had to get the permission of the village elders to vaccinate. And this is a fellow getting vaccinated in the trial. And I'm going to briefly describe to you the trial and the results, and then we'll move on. But again, if you speak French, you could understand what's going on, if you could hear what's going on, but I guess the sound isn't working. So that's okay. But this fellow, the fellow sitting in front of him as an observer to make sure he's okay and everything's fine. You can see everything's fine. He's very happy, and he's getting an experimental vaccine for a disease that could kill him. So, but at this point, nobody knows if the vaccine works or not. But he's going to give it a try. But he doesn't know if in this case, he does know he's getting vaccine. Okay, how did we do this in Guinea? So we caught this is the epidemic curve of the epidemic in Guinea, and we caught the last bit of the curve and did the trial right here in the end. And this is a typical ring vaccination site, so there are mobile sites where we move the vaccine, and we either vaccinated the contacts and the contacts of the contacts, the ring, immediately, or we waited 3 weeks and came back and vaccinated them. And then we were able to compare the Ebola rates in those who were vaccinated immediately to those who were waiting to be vaccinated before they were vaccinated in the entire ring. And I won't go through all the statistical methods, but from that we were able to estimate the efficacy of the vaccine. And so this is the result, the interim result of the trial. So what I'm showing here is the cumulative number of cases. Each little bump is a case. In the down here is the placebo, the delayed arm, and up here, I'm sorry, down here is the immediate arm, and up here, oh, you can't see my pointer. So below, the lower curve is, this flat one is the vaccine arm, and the one going up is the arm that's delayed. And since the vaccine takes a few days to work, and we're vaccinating cases, which is 7 or 8 days after they were infected, we didn't start counting cases till 10 days after they were vaccinated. So that shaded area is the period where we don't count cases because they didn't have time. They were either already infected when they were vaccinated or they didn't have time to develop immunity. So based on those two curves, you can see that in the vaccinated arm goes flat after about 5 or 6 days, and the delayed arm keeps going up until day 21 when they start getting vaccinated. And so you can see the vaccine's highly effective, and in fact there wasn't a single case in a vaccinated person 10 days or more after they were vaccinated in the entire trial. So that means the estimated efficacy was 100% with a 95% confidence interval of 75% to 100%. The p-value for this was 0.0038. So that's the probability of making a mistake and claiming the vaccine works when it doesn't. So very low. This was an interim analysis at approximately 100 rings, where 200 was the final. The efficacy was so good that the trial was stopped at that point and everybody received vaccine. The lower plot shows the rates in the the delayed arm up top and the vaccinated arm down below for everybody in the ring. And we were only able to vaccinate about 60% of the people in the ring. So that's both in vaccinated and unvaccinated people. And so the overall effectiveness of the ring vaccination was 75%, although the trial wasn't powered to measure that. So that means the vaccine reduced the probability somebody's infected in a vaccinated ring by 75% compared to a typical person in an unvaccinated ring, regardless of whether they're vaccinated or not. So not only did the ring vaccination protect the vaccinated people, but also the unvaccinated people if they were in an unvaccinated ring. So what does that mean? That means we have a vaccine against Ebola, and this is called it's a VSV vaccine, vesicular stomatitis vector vaccine, now known as Erbo, made by Merck company. We know the efficacy is in the 75 to 100% range, and that the overall protection is about 75% with 50% coverage. Based on that, a mobile stockpile of Ebola vaccines has been created and is used now. Every time there's an Ebola outbreak, we go in and do ring vaccination. So far, since this result, up to the present, almost 500,000 people have been vaccinated just in 2019 and 2022 outbreaks of Ebola in the DRC. Okay, so that's all I'm going to say about Ebola. We're going to be able to control Ebola from now on, thanks to this one vaccine and thanks to ring vaccination. Okay, what are we doing about SARS-CoV-19? Now, as you know, as I mentioned, it originated, we know for sure, in Wuhan, China, probably in December of 2019, probably in an infected animal that was used, for food in a wet market. And the pangolin is the biggest suspect, but we're not sure if it was a pangolin or pangolins that introduced the virus. Early on, in a science paper, this was joint working with Alex's Vespignani's group, we were able to predict the spread of the virus out of China to the rest of the planet, and back calculate the number of infected people at that time. And this was in around April of 2020. And so the lines on the left just shows the country of the region in China where was the origin. I wish I had a pointer, but I don't see any way to point. But anyway, on the left is the origin, on the right is the countries, the sink where the model's predicting the virus is going. The darker the color, the more are being transmitted. And before the travel lockdown, and then after the travel ban. And you can see after the travel ban, we had a lot more spread than even before the travel ban. So the point was that the virus spread all over the planet. Thank you very much. Yeah. Let's see if I can actually make it work now. Yeah, it still might not be, I don't think I can pull that off unless I stand out there. But anyway, it was a good try. So there was no way to contain this virus. If you read that science paper, you'll understand why and how it spread. I knew this. So in 2000, on February 11th and 12th of 2020, there was a 2-day meeting at WHO on this virus. And on February 13th, I unfortunately talked to the press about what I thought was going on. And so you can see the headline, coronavirus could infect 2/3 of the globe, research shows. And then it's based on my calculations I did at that time, because I knew the basic reproductive number was about 2.5. And I knew that there was no way to stop the virus. The surveillance containment wasn't going to do that. So you can see it says that me, advisor to WHO, said that, well, there's already at least 60,000 cases on February 13th in China, and there's no way to stop it, and it's going to infect the entire planet. And it turns out that all turned out to be true. But at the time, it was a little traumatic, especially for WHO, and I was heavily castigated. Okay, so let's take a quick look at what's going on in Italy now, and maybe a week from now, more of you will be wearing masks. I don't know, but you can see we do not have COVID-19 under control, and in fact, in this country, it's starting to go up pretty fast. And why is it doing that? It's something, again, we did not anticipate, but happened, and that was evolution of the virus. And so this is mostly due to Omicron variant BA.4 and BA.5, which is about this, despite the 4 and 5 numbers, about the 6th or 7th major mutational clade we now have of Omicron. This virus has large immune escape capacity. It doesn't really respect prior immunity, either due to vaccine or to prior infection. Fortunately, the protection against severe disease seems to be holding up, although that's beginning to deteriorate as well. What's the blueprint doing about this? So there's 4 different kinds of vaccine products, and they all need to be tested. There's live attenuated vaccines And there's one called Epidemics, which is going to go into the field soon. There's viral vector vaccines that have been tested, such as the Johnson & Johnson vaccine. There's nucleic acid vaccines, which are the most famous ones, the mRNAs, and protein-based vaccines. And we have an example of that of a Medigen product I'll tell you about in a minute. Initially, these vaccines had very good success against the Wuhan strain. And this is just showing the Pfizer vaccine. This was the data that were used for the licensure of the vaccine. Again, this is showing cumulative incidence in a large trial that was conducted, where the upper curve is the incidence, cumulative incidence in the vaccinated, unvaccinated, or placebo arm, and below is the incidence in the vaccinated arm. So the initial efficacy was about 95% for a very tight confidence interval, and it looked like very, very high efficacy, although you couldn't tell from the trial, against severe disease. However, what's happened is all these variants. So most licensed COVID vaccines initially had the good ones. There's a lot of bad ones too, which I won't talk about, which don't work. But the good ones, like Pfizer and Moderna and Johnson & Johnson and some others, had initial efficacy of 90% or higher, but now that's dropped to less than 40%. This is just against any illness. And it's probably even lower than 40%. We don't know exactly how low. However, the efficacy against severe disease, given infection illness, is still high. Probably initially was above 95%, and now is maybe in the 90% region, but also slipping slowly. So we need an Omicron vaccine for primary series and boosters, or possibly a live attenuated vaccine that stimulates mucosal immunity. It doesn't depend on antibodies. So that's what the WHO Solidarity Trial is doing. It's an international randomized trial of many candidates all at once. It should provide efficacy and reliable evaluation against several vaccines simultaneously to assess efficacy and safety. And then it should be helpful in identifying vaccines that can be deployed. This rather complicated flow diagram just shows how this trial works. It evaluates several different vaccines simultaneously, and then it expeditiously enrolls participants in sites with high COVID-19 incidence. It estimates efficacy of designing and conducting separate trials, and it's really an international collaboration of many, many different countries. So currently, it's in the field in the Philippines, Colombia, and Mali, and we're analyzing the data now from the first protein-based vaccine to be tested, which is a protein-based adjuvanted vaccine. And within a week or two, we should know how well that vaccine worked against Omicron. Omicron vaccines are going into the field soon, and as I said, a live attenuated vaccine called Epidemics is also going into the field soon. So we should be able to get some better vaccines, hopefully, in the near future, thanks to this design. Okay, so I want to end the talk by a brief description of what we're doing about monkeypox, since that seems to be on everybody's mind at the moment. Unfortunately, so monkeypox, as I said, the origin is probably in rodents, and yes, monkeys, but mostly rodents in Central and West Africa. And I just showed some of the cute animals that are responsible, especially the rodents. And so they for a long time, have been passing in West Africa and Central Africa from rodents to humans, and then having very sporadic spread. So not much transmission. The R0 was certainly less than 1. So we had sporadic small outbreaks over and over and over since 1958. Now we have spread outside of Africa, and the early genetic analysis of the virus shows it is a mutated virus. So it probably has an R naught that's probably right around 1 or maybe slightly larger. This is the latest statistics, which unfortunately need to be updated, but it's not my fault, from WHO, showing the epidemic outside of Africa. And so as of June 15th, there's been a total of about 2,100 cases documented and confirmed throughout the planet. And this is just showing the distribution of the current outbreak, including in Africa, of cases. So you can see the heaviest distribution of cases outside of Africa are in Europe, especially in Spain, France, and Germany, and Italy not so much, and some in North America, and some in West Africa. On Friday, the WHO special committee met to decide whether or not to declare monkeypox a public health emergency of international concern. And by Friday afternoon, well, they met on Thursday, sorry. Well, I'm getting my days mixed up. They met on Wednesday. Let's see, what day did we leave? Now I'm mixed up exactly what day they left. We left on Thursday. They met on Wednesday, yeah. And no, they met on Thursday, sorry, last Thursday. And they made an announcement on Friday that it was a public health emergency of international concern, and then made an announcement on Saturday that it wasn't. So it's not, but it's also, it's very concerning. But it's not, it hasn't been declared a pandemic yet by the WHO. Yeah. What are we going to do about monkeypox? So what I've been assigned is do something with vaccines. So we're going to do ring vaccination for monkeypox. Monkeypox is related to smallpox, so similar to smallpox, we can do ring vaccination. And what we can do with monkeypox vaccine is find the index case and vaccinate the index case, which we don't do for Ebola because the vaccine works in people already infected. And then we'll find the contacts of those individuals and vaccinate them, and do this in some kind of random way, either placebo or delay, because we don't have a monkeypox vaccine that we know works. Let's see. So the inspiration for this design was the development of Erbo, or VSV vaccine for Ebola, and the solid. So that's one inspiration for doing this. The other is the WHO Solidarity Trial. So this vaccine trial will be in many countries and run on a single platform. So how's it going to work? As I said, most of the human information on VE in action is from smallpox. We don't. The monkeypox vaccines are actually smallpox vaccines. We don't know if they work for monkeypox. We believe they do, and we believe the efficacy could be 85%, but we don't know this. The vaccine, has some protective effect during if you already vaccinate people, and there are only 2 vaccines available. The first one made by Bavarian Nordic, Geneos, is live attenuated non-replicating MVA or smallpox vector. It takes 2 doses. It's believed to be safe, and it's in limited supply. The other vaccine available is stockpiled smallpox vaccine, which is the live replicating vaccinia MVA virus. Don't know if it works against monkeypox. It's not very safe. and it probably injures or kills about 1 in 30,000 people that get vaccinated. So you probably don't want to use that. We'll go ahead and do the trial, very similar way that we did the Ebola ring vaccine trial. That vaccine and possibly several other experimental vaccines into the populations at risk. Outside of Africa, the populations at risk are mostly sexual contact networks among gay men. And so there, it's well known that, how to find the contacts and the contacts of the contacts. These are all sexual contacts. And we're currently in negotiation with several European countries, including right now Germany and the UK, about doing this. Let me just, you probably don't need to know all these details, so let me, since I see time is running a little short, let me just point out that there's many possible comparators. We'd like to use placebo, but we probably can't. We'd probably use delayed vaccination. We could use other monkeypox vaccine as a comparator, but that's unlikely. And we could use antiviral. There's at least one antiviral that's believed to work against smallpox infection, but probably won't use that either. So it'll probably be delayed vaccination. The primary endpoint will be the rate of virologically confirmed monkeypox disease regardless of severity. And then there'll be a whole host of secondary outcomes, including can we prevent transmission to others the way we did for Ebola? How well does the post-exposure prophylaxis, in other words, vaccinating already infected people work? Can we protect against fatal disease, although there aren't many deaths? Can we protect against infection? Can we shorten, how long does the vaccine work and how quickly does it wane? And maybe we can find some immune correlates of protection. So I think I'm going to stop at that point, since you probably have quite a few questions. I was going to go through all the ways of doing this, but I think due to time, I won't do that. And just thank you and thank the vaccines.
Okay, please, if there's any question from the floor.
Or comments.
Ira, who's stockpiling the vaccines for Ebola?
So that's stockpiled by a group called IAVI, which is it's an international organization that buys vaccines for the developing world. And then it's deposited with the World Health Organization, which distributes it by actually carrying out ring vaccination when needed. So.
And in emergency, in a situation of emergency like the Ebola, what was the vaccination ratio between treatment and control? The randomization ratio.
Okay, so that's a very interesting question. So if there's one vaccine being tested, we always do 1-to-1. But if there's two vaccines being tested, then we do, we do 2/3 vaccinated, 1/3 vaccinated. If there's 4, then we do, if there's 3, we do 1/4 of people each get a vaccine, and then 1/4 gets placebo. So we vary according to how many vaccines are being tested, but it's always a 1-to-1 ratio comparing vaccine to placebo.
I have a curiosity. Based on your experience, what type of data should we be collecting that we are not collecting today? Like, people are ramping up genetic surveillance, wastewater surveillance. Like, can you give a sense of what are the priorities according to your experience?
So data for emergence or control, or
I would say both. I would say both. Like, in terms of our toolbox against epidemics, like what type of preparedness and data readiness should we have?
Yeah, so that answering that question would require another seminar, but But one type of data which has become critical, and it's being collected but not as well as it should, is the genetics data, the sequencing. And we really should be sampling and covering everywhere where these viruses are spreading. We should be sampling these viruses and sequencing them, because that's an incredibly important tool that we can use, not only to understand transmission, but track the virus. And for example, Trevor Bedford, working with the sequencing data, he's at the Hutchinson Research Center for monkeypox, has quickly been able to tell us where monkeypox is going, how it's evolving. And he's been able to show us that virus has been circulating since 2017 in gay populations outside of Africa. So, I think the genetics, genomics data, we should be doing a much better job of collecting that for one example. But I think I think almost everything, even basic things like case reporting and surveillance, could be done much better if we had a uniform system for the entire planet for doing that, instead of having every single country and every single region in every country collecting even basic data on cases and incidents and all these things. So there's been several attempts to deal with this, and the blueprint, it's one of the goals of the blueprint is to try to consolidate surveillance and data collection in a much more uniform way, in a much deeper way than is currently being done. But.
Thank you. Any other questions from the room? I see one in the back.
Yeah. Can you speak a little louder? I can't quite pick, or stand up maybe.
Daniele, come here.
Yeah. I heard some of it, but not all of it.
It's just a very general curiosity.
Yeah.
So there are some viruses that have been eradicated, right?
No.
None.
Other than smallpox. The only human virus to ever be eradicated was smallpox.
And why was it possible for that one?
Because, well, with smallpox, there was no zoonotic source.
So that's the
only
problem.
human. No zoonotic source, only humans. When you get infected, the virus is stable. It doesn't evolve. And once you're infected, you're more or less immune for life. And we had a good, easy to implement vaccine. It's a variolation with like a little pitchfork that did not require much refrigeration. And again, organized by WHO, we had a global effort to eradicate smallpox. And yeah, some people, us old people, have the scar. You don't.
Yeah,
I'm
my
sure.
parents.
You do?
No, not me. My parents.
But and ring vaccination is what really did it. Without ring vaccination, we would not have eradicated smallpox.
But there's no hope for other viruses. I mean,
No, there's never been another human virus eradicated. I think there is an animal virus. I think rinderpest has been eradicated in African hooved animals. So we managed to eradicate that. But that's not a human virus. Yeah, that's
Thanks.
Well, first of all, thanks a lot for the talk. I really enjoyed it. I'm also a bit an outsider, so my question is rather simple. So how do you conceive this strategy for vaccination? Because you explained during the talk that one of them is this ring vaccination, let's say, but instead I see that with COVID, we did a mass vaccination, right? So it's just like, what are the considerations behind the choice? Like, I guess it depends on urgency and many other parameters, but I would just like to understand a bit better about that. Thanks.
Yeah, so for a disease that's highly transmissible and spread all over the place, you can't do ring vaccination. So you have to do mass vaccination or geographically targeted vaccination. If the virus is not that transmissible and the incidence is fairly low and patchy, then you can do something like ring vaccination. Originally smallpox was very widespread, and so ring vaccination could not be used to control it. But once we had most of the world vaccinated and smallpox just kept coming in relatively small outbreaks, then we could go to every single outbreak and do ring vaccination and eradicate it. And the other thing, I think ring vaccination could be used for COVID now if we had the resolve to do it. And we could drive COVID to a very low level if we did do ring vaccination. And we had a vaccine that worked, which we don't have anymore. So we could have done something like ring vaccination for COVID, especially in the beginning. Maybe in March or April of 2020. Of course, we didn't have a vaccine. But if we had a vaccine, we could have possibly stopped COVID-19 with ring vaccination. But it would have had to occurred before there was a spread all over the planet. Yeah. So there's we've written some papers over the years on containing these outbreaks, even new viruses. If we had stockpiled vaccines or antivirals, then we could use something like ring vaccination to stop them from spreading widely right as they're emerging, if you could catch them at that stage. So, one final thought. So we do have some papers, again with Alex Vespignani and company, comparing ring vaccination to mass vaccination to targeted vaccination. And, and if you have the resources, ring vaccination always wins, but you may not have the resources. You can't do ring vaccination for millions of people, unless you have millions of contact tracers who can move very fast. Yeah. So, okay, yeah, that's a really good question.
Okay, if there are no more questions, I remind you that tomorrow there will be another talk, a bit more technical talk about vaccination and therapies for epidemic illnesses in the Department of Mathematical Sciences. Thank you, Ira. Thank you very much, and thanks everybody for participating.